In a part of the world that's often shaken by political instability, how does one country become the region's fighter, the one that steps in again and again to defend democracy? Today, we're diving into Nigeria's incredible role as West Africa's shield against military coups, and we're going to do it by looking at two very different leaders with two very different ways of getting the job done. So, let's start with the big question. How do you actually stop a military coup? Is it with a quiet phone call and a firm handshake, a long, carefully negotiated deal, or is it with the unmistakable roar of a fighter jet engine? Yeah, as we're about to find out, the answer, it's not so simple. And Nigeria's history gives us two powerful and pretty contrasting examples. In recent years, it's felt like a real domino effect across West Africa. Some have even called it a coup contagion, where one military takeover just seems to spark another. But right in the middle of all that chaos, one regional heavyweight has repeatedly drawn a line in the sand, using its influence, its authority, and yeah, its military might to push back. And that nation, of course, is Nigeria. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at this coup contagion. Then we'll meet our two main players, the diplomatic titan and the modern defender. After that, we're going to piece their strategies together into what you might call a modern anti-coup playbook. And we'll wrap it all up by asking the big question, what works better today, diplomacy or deterrence? So we've got the same nagging problem, military takeovers threatening elected governments. But what's fascinating here is that we have two Nigerian presidents, separated by a couple of decades, who stared down that same threat with two totally distinct methods. This right here, this table frames our entire story. On one side, you've got President Olusegun Obasanjo back in the early 2000s. They called him the diplomat. His whole game was about intense, personal, hands-on negotiation. Then on the other side, we've got President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in a hypothetical 2025 scenario, playing the role of the deterrent. His strategy, swift, decisive, rapid military force. Two different eras, two leaders, and two radically different ways of handling a crisis. All right, let's wind the clock back a bit. We're talking about President Obasanjo. Now, what's crucial to remember is that he was a former general himself. He came back to power as a civilian, sure, but he knew the military mindset inside and out. And yet, he chose diplomacy as his main weapon to keep the region stable. And this quote, it just nails his whole philosophy. It wasn't just about talking. The key is that last part, backed by the credible threat of decisive intervention. Everybody in the room knew that if the talking failed, Nigeria had the power to act. That unspoken threat, that's what gave his diplomatic words so much weight, so much punch. And if you want to see that philosophy in action, just look at this timeline from the 2003 coup in São Tomé and Príncipe. Day 1, a coup is announced. By day 2, Obasanjo is on the record condemning the coup leader by name. By day 4, he doesn't just send a representative, he gets on his presidential jet himself and flies there to lead the talks. And just a week after it all started, the coup is over and the president is back in power. That's not just diplomacy. That's a diplomatic blitzkrieg. And São Tomé wasn't a fluke. Not at all. Obasanjo was like a political chess master. Take Guinea-Bissau. He realized that the leader who'd been kicked out was actually super unpopular. So instead of forcing him back into power, which would have been unstable, he brokered a clever compromise for a new civilian transition. Then in Togo, he used the combined might of regional groups like ECOWAS and the African Union to apply just relentless pressure until things got back to normal. Okay, now let's jump forward. Different time, different leader, different playbook. Here we have President Bola Ahmed Tinubu acting as the chairman of ECOWAS. That's the Economic Community of West African States. And he's facing the same kind of threat, but with a completely different set of tools. President Tinubu's approach is best described by this modern military idea, asymmetric power projection. This isn't about long, drawn-out talks or finding a middle ground. No, this is about using a sharp, fast, and overwhelming show of force to get one very specific thing done. In this case, putting a democratic government back in charge and then getting out. And just how fast are we talking? Look at this number, 24 hours. That's it. That's the entire timeline from the moment the call for help came in to the moment constitutional order was fully restored. It's just a staggering display of regional readiness and, maybe more importantly, political will. So here's the play-by-play from that 2025 Benin scenario. First, the legitimate president asks for help. In response, President Tinubu, as the head of ECOWAS, doesn't set up a meeting. He orders an immediate deployment. Within hours, Nigerian jets are in the sky, securing the airspace to back up loyal troops on the ground, and the coup just falls apart. The message was crystal clear. We're not negotiating. This ends now. So you've got the diplomat on one side and the deterrent on the other. Seems like they're total opposites, right? Well, what if they're not? What if the most effective strategy today is actually a mix of both? That's exactly what a modern anti-coup playbook suggests. It's a synthesis of these two powerful legacies. And this, right here, is the core idea. It's not about choosing Obasanjo's way or Tinubu's way. It's about recognizing that real, lasting stability demands both. You absolutely need the wisdom of diplomacy to solve problems before they blow up, but you also need that unwavering readiness to act decisively when someone crosses a red line. You know, a smart playbook starts way before any soldiers hit the streets. Pillar 1 is all about prevention, about coup-proofing a society by tackling the root causes. I mean, why do people sometimes welcome a military takeover? Usually, it's because they're fed up. So you have to fix the things that make people lose hope. That means cracking down on corruption, creating jobs and opportunities for young people, and, this is a big one, leaders have got to respect term limits to keep the public's trust. All right, Pillar 2. This is the big stick part of the equation. This is all about deterrence. The goal here is simple. Make a coup so costly, so painful, that it's just not worth trying. You need a fully funded and well-trained ECOWAS standby force that can deploy in hours, not weeks. The second a coup is announced, you slap automatic crushing sanctions on the leaders and their families. And you work nonstop to professionalize the region's militaries, so their loyalty is to the Constitution, not some general with an ego. And finally, Pillar 3 gets down to the money. Because let's be real, economic problems are often the spark that lights the whole thing on fire. So you build resilience by making sure economies aren't dependent on just one thing, like oil. And you create something like a democracy support fund. Think of it like an insurance policy for democracy. If a friendly government is in trouble, its allies can step in with quick cash to keep things stable, so they're not forced to make desperate deals with mutineers. So where does that leave us? We've seen the diplomatic masterclass from Obasanjo, and we've seen the decisive show of force from Tinubu. We've seen how you can combine these two legacies into a really powerful, multi-layered playbook for defending democracy in the 21st century. But this all leads to one final, really tough question. In a world that seems to be getting more and more unstable, have we hit a point where the credible, immediate threat of force is actually more important than the patient art of diplomacy? Is that swift, decisive Benin model the new gold standard for keeping order? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer.